Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. I'm very excited because today we are welcoming a brand new manufacturer into our Sweetwater family. We're welcoming Reftone to Sweetwater. And I've got special guests with me here today. This is Dave Hampton and Lisa Chamblee. And we're so glad to have you guys join us here today.
Thank you. We're great. We're happy to be here.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So both of you have quite a story in the industry. Audio engineers and studio managers and studio designers and technicians. And let's talk to each of you a little bit individually. Lisa, I saw on your resume, if you will, George Duke, Prince, Paisley Park, Oasis Mastering. Tell us a little bit about your history in the industry.
Yeah, those are my engineering days. Very fond. It's from my youth when I was a studio rat. So, yeah, I was very, very excited to get into audio, and engineering has always brought me into a lot of interesting rooms. And, you know, I was a recording engineer. So to me, that's when the magic happened. So I was so blessed to record like Prince, George Duke, and then at George's, he was super producer. So he had the best session musicians there. So I worked there as a second with Eric Zobler, and got to learn everything from him as well. So that until George passed. So that was in LA. And yeah, just mastering. I was a manager at a mastering studio, Oasis Mastering. So I got to listen to mixes all day and masters, you know, mixes coming in and masters going out all day. So it definitely tuned my ears. And that was around the same time that we had started Reftone. So I had my cube set up at my desk. I'd listen to the mixes, and I could hear, I bet Gene Grimaldi was the engineer. I said, oh, I bet Gene might send this back to, he might want the mixer to change something. So it was great to actually listen to the Reftones when I was in that job.
Yeah, right. And Dave, we met back when I was with EQ magazine many years ago. But I've always found it interesting that you somehow made the transition from guided missiles to audio engineering to studio designing to now gear designer.
Yeah. I came a long way, and I started out with electronics being my thing, and then slowly went into electronic music and recording. And then I started working at Oberheim years ago. So many people know me for years as the Oberheim guy. And then I broke away and went independent and was a service technician for a lot of independents when the studio system started to change and they were doing all in budgets. I was doing a lot of direct work for artists. So I've worked in a lot of different camps over about 40 plus years now. And still do to this day have outside clients, and we still work on their studios and do private consultations for them. And Reftone was just a natural production off of that, doing many solutions for many different people. It gave me the opportunity to try some things, and the first initial monitors I built were just solutions I did, and they happened to work, and then I just filed it away. And then at an appropriate time, it seemed 2012, audio was changing. A lot of things were changing. Even the Pro Tools had been on the scene, and education was changing. So I noticed that the trend was for many people to just be getting familiar with audio and not really understanding some of the basics that we were taught years ago. So it kind of helped us get a start on restating some basic principles and getting people familiar with the mid-range level. That was the goal when we first started, was to get people a product that was precise, get them a product that was affordable, and get them a product that gave them a solid relationship to the mid-range, not just something that sounded like the crappy TV speaker. Something that actually sounded good and could carry the signal that is being generated now, because content has changed. We started out in a music space and now we're in a content space. So it's much different. The delivery systems and everything that's going on, much different nowadays.
Right. One of the things I really like about Reftone and the monitors is that you're both coming from a very real world perspective on this. Dave, you mentioned audio engineering. You didn't mention your Grammy with Marcus Miller or your work with Herbie Hancock, and you are also connected with Paisley Park and others as well. And so both of you have a tremendous background in the real world, which I think translates directly to these monitors. I've got one here. I'll hold it up if I can do it without knocking everything over. But this is what we're talking about here. This is the Reftone. This happens to be an LD3B. So tell us a little bit about what, there's LD3 as well. This is the LD3B. Tell us about the monitors. You started developing them in about 2011, I believe, and kind of the journey of coming to fruition with a product.
Yeah, the LD3B that you're holding is kind of the culmination of our efforts. Our original product we took off, and our goal was to get it inside of studios to people who knew everything about music and recording, and to get it in schools to people who were just learning. And when we did our first initial pass of stuff we assembled, we tested it in that market, and it was very successful. Overall, we saw a raise in the caliber of what they were turning in. And so that gave us the impetus to start the company. And then, as we've introduced with you guys, the Bluetooth product is the first product that's for a studio grade monitor, because we're already in control rooms, that gives people the ability to go to Bluetooth. And as you guys know, there's many products now, even in your catalog, that are coming out with Bluetooth features to be able to broadcast and connect up. And as COVID has taught us, the workstation and the workplace has really gotten smaller before it's gotten larger. And so the need for a product like Reftone, especially Reftone in Bluetooth, is paramount right now, because it's really about using the least amount of gear in some cases and being able to do the most. And our gear gives you the standard. It is the new reference standard, and it allows you just to make decisions. And more often than not, you're going to be on the money. We test all of our products with our current clients. So anytime you see a Reftone product, it's already been tested on records. It's already been tested in the studio under game conditions. We wouldn't put anything out there any other way.
Right, right. They're fascinating speakers. It's a single driver with, you'd mentioned sort of the focus on the mid-range there, but the frequency response may surprise people that it actually does reach from 70 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So it's a very broad frequency response on the speaker. There are two versions, correct? There's the passive LD3 and then the LD3B, which we talked about, which also has a auxiliary input, correct, for a wired connection?
Yes.
On that as well?
Yeah, it's cool that you brought up the real life thing, because when Dave designed them, I was in the studios recording, doing a lot of vocal production and working on, pretty expensive speakers. And I couldn't hear, the details that I heard when Dave gave me the prototypes for the Ref Cubes. I was blown away. It was just it was inspiring. And I remember hearing I'm going to get graphic, but I remember hearing the spit and like gargle, from the vocalist. I'd never heard that before. I could hear it through the Reftones. I could solo the track and like, oh my gosh, that's what that was going on. And so it helped me just record a cleaner signal. And if I needed to adjust the mic, just a hair, and then it would improve everything just right away. So that's when I remember saying to Dave, these are awesome. Like, everyone should be able to use these. Like, let's mass produce these. Let's get these out to everyone. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. Was that sort of the genesis of really pushing the company forward and increasing the distribution?
Yeah, really. It was really just we were watching the audio industry change in front of us. We were both heavily involved in education as well. So when we would go around to different schools, we would notice that schools were teaching Pro Tools as if it was audio, and Pro Tools is a capture system for audio. It is not audio. And so there are a lot of principles that get skipped over sometimes when people are trying to just teach and get a hold of a class and guide it through unknown territory. And one of the things that I noticed that was not being taught was mono referencing and phase alignment, just some real important things that you need to spend some time on. And it's not necessarily about having all these 2- and 3-way self-powered monitors and all that. It's about having a good relationship with the mid-range frequencies, because that's where it all starts. And so we kind of took everything and kind of reversed it and said, well, let's apply it like this. Rather than preaching to people and waving a finger, I'm going, no, this is the way you do it. Let's give them a product that lets them use it experience it for themselves. They make the choices and they go in the right direction naturally. And that's kind of why we kind of launched it the way we did. And we've been doing it really, really solid with our different communities ever since. And that's why we by the time we reach now where we're in Sweetwater, it's after a long, hard walk uphill, you know? And
yeah, we're definitely the underdogs. You know, our competitors have been around for decades, and, you know, the single driver, you know, just principle has been around. And so when Dave designed it with the quality in mind of when he would do these, you know, custom speakers, and just being able to use real wood. I remember just that just blew me away, just how it sounds, you know, how you have that sound coming through from real wood cabinets. Just the same of when, you know, you get the larges in the, you know, in the wall, those speakers. So that definitely, you know, inspired that, you know, reference tone. That's why they're named Reftone, to really give people that reference. Because when you're in the studio working for hours, we all know that is grunt work. It takes a long, you know, it's rough. And so you need you need tools that will help with ear fatigue. So the Reftones, like, you can listen because you can hear the details at low levels. So you don't have to blast it. You don't have to keep turning it up. Can I hear? I'm trying to hear it. You know, you don't have to turn it up. You can actually turn it down and still be able to hear. So,
and truthfully, with a lot of the work that's going on now, where and you guys experience it there because you do a lot of systems that are in the box, and everybody's in the box. What we found is that when the transition came for a lot of workflow to go in the box, the biggest challenge there was to people who were mixing and doing final stage preparation was that their poor compression habits and poor things got passed over into the final mix. And why was that happening? Well, it was happening because all of a sudden we had self-powered monitors step in the way, 2-3-way monitors that were fancy, and they had coloration of all different kinds because of their design. Not that they weren't good speakers, they're very good speakers, but when you introduce the multiple driver, internal crossover, internal amplifier, you're introducing a whole nother color to the final outcome. And so what we found is that by keeping with our mainstay, just our solid wood design, our single driver, and just let's go with clarity, let's go with giving people this mid-range thing, we can help them make these low-end decisions so that when they put it in any monitor, it's going to sound good. But not the challenge that they're getting, because what's happening now is we had a lot of people that when the transition to the box came, their education into how to use the box and manicure the box for how they work wasn't there yet. So they just automatically transitioned into using the box, turning up the controls and going. There was no adjustment period. So what we allow for is a proper adjustment. And more often than not, when you see our stuff in a lot of studios, it's a checksum thing. People use us as the checksum, especially for in the box.
Right, right. And I was actually going to ask you about that. Do you recommend that someone use these as their primary monitors and shift other monitors, or do you find that people are using these more as that second reference to really focus in on the mid-range?
People that we talk to, I talk to a lot of customers, they start off using it like, you know, just checking. After they've been on their mid-size, you know, mid-range, you know, whatever. But then they find themselves actually staying on the Reftones. Yeah. Because they can make the types of decisions, they're so accurate that when they're making that decision, they know it's actually happening. And so sometimes they'll use it up to 70%, 60%. And yeah, so it's definitely an addition, but some customers or, you know, end users definitely use it as just their only pair, and they get away with it because, you know, sometimes if someone's in a bedroom or an extra room, they don't want to be that loud, and they actually can't make that much noise, and so it is beneficial to have something so accurate that is small, compact. And they actually have so much sound coming out of them. It's surprising. Yeah.
One of the reasons why we have an amp pack that we also used to sell a lot of to music directors and to live guys, because being in the music director chair, they're oftentimes having to rehearse the band and adjust files. And so this allowed them to adjust the files dry so they could make their edits and then give it to their engineer in case they had to do a TV data or something. But it was always a reference. It allowed them to reference the material they had on their hard drive, make the edit, and then keep going faster. So we have a lot of production people that use it as a final stage. It's their final stage tool. We've got them out with Earth, Wind, and Fire. We've got them out with, for the playback guys, we've had them out with Lady Gaga. We've had them out with Mariah Carey, everybody. And so the role of a Reftone is anywhere where you need clarity and you need access and judgment. And nowadays, when you're doing a live show or you're doing video playback, and we got some on use for TV shows as well, you need accuracy. You need to be able to know what you're giving the booth. You need to be able to know what it sounds like. So it really just helps out all the way around. But our goal inevitably was that it was a creative tool that could be used for people building audio content anywhere across the board. And so we're really happy that by the time we introduce something like Bluetooth, we can do it with Sweetwater.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So do you recommend, I know you make it available both in pairs, but also as a single speaker. Do you recommend one over the other, or is there a particular application where someone would have one versus two speakers?
You know, I think you can never go wrong with the mono reference. I think more and more of the younger engineers are beginning to understand the magic of mono now that we've had tools that are introduced to help you take a break and say, let me see what's going on over here. So we have people who are using a stereo set and a mono set, just a mono single, just to have parity across the board. But you know, I think that you have all different kinds of people who are doing audio now. I think audio has changed, and so the reference and what everybody uses as their home run, so to speak, is so drastically different. I think for the most part, I would recommend that people use it for a stereo summing, and then most of your summing center sections now give you the ability to have a mono switch, and so it'll send a mono signal. And I would just implore everybody to just go beyond just the basics and spend some time learning and understanding monos, learning and understand your spatial things that are going on with your stereo left and right, and you'll be amazed at what you can get out of your mixes when you just spend some time with your basic tools.
Yeah, I would say our customers, it's really subjective. Some people they're all about mono, and so they'll buy a stereo pair and push them together, or they'll just buy a mono ref cube. So it's definitely up to people's taste, and so that's why we're happy to accommodate whatever their taste is.
Sure, right. I was surprised when I looked at the passive monitors. I guess I shouldn't say surprised, but maybe you can discuss a little bit. The amplifiers you recommend to go with the passive monitors, some of those are surprisingly high wattage, high output amplifiers. Is there a danger of putting too powerful of an amplifier with the passive speakers?
Not for us.
They do take up to 300 watts.
300 watts,
so
okay.
It was really important to be a professional grade, and be able to take over 100 watts. So that's what I've been suggesting for customers. If they have space for an amp rack space and they want over 100 watts, they should get the passive ref cubes. If they're not so worried about that, they want more convenience and it's about under 100 watts, that's when they should get the powered. And I definitely want to point out that it was important for us to, the reason that our power don't have that much power compared to what passives can take is because we didn't want to put the power inside the box. So even this has a wall where this is where the power is. So that's where we can stay with our principles of the ref cube being, there's no power inside the cabinet.
Right.
That's important for us.
Right. Yeah. And basically one cabinet in the stereo pair is kind of the brain, I guess, if you will, with the active one, and then it connects up to the other side is passive. But to your point earlier about the wooden cabinets, they're surprisingly heavy. I mean, they're a solid.
Yeah, ours is a solid product. We Baltic birch plywood, and that comes from the principle that when we design studios, a lot of times back in the day, especially when we get call out for an Augsburger or something, those are called out for Baltic birch. So when I built all the prototypes, I said, no, let's go Baltic birch. That's what you build and carries the tone. So before we even get to designing the driver, our box already had a tone. It was not a cheaply designed box. It was not designed out of a wood that takes the paint really good and looks good on the finish. We take paint good, we look good on the finish, but we pick the products that we pick and the materials we pick because it builds a superior product. We stayed with paper because paper gives us the frequencies that we need. Now, we went to our own priority and formula for the paper. So we don't use a seamed paper like most driver companies who are still complying in paper, but we have our own formula for the paper drivers that we use. So and again, we looked at where frequencies are being delivered for today. So from 2012 on is when we designed these monitors. So our theory behind this is presented for where sound is and where music is and where content is from 2012 to 2021, where we're at today. And that's the evolution of our product. The theory behind driver manufacturing has not changed in some time. But, and so some products still are made for the principles that were entertained when they first came about, which is great, but audio has moved to a different place. All of your genres of music have increased low end across the board. So because of those changes, it changes the workflow, it changes every little thing. So you have to keep that in mind when you're designing tools for people to make judgment calls on. And that's kind of where we sit, and that's why we use birch plywood. That's why we use our own formula with the paper. That's why we're a smaller physical cabinet than anything else like that, but we have more mass. Yeah.
And we're on, it's LD3 right now, but our first generation was LD1. And we had a recent customer who reached out, and he had purchased LD1s from his friend who wasn't doing audio anymore. So this person had our first generation, like back 2012, and, had worked through their career, and these cubes are now passed on to a new person and helping their career. So we build these to last. They are paper, and if they do, paper, it can fatigue. So if it does, you know how easy it is to pull these out and put a new driver in? Very easy. Yeah. So that was very important for us as well.
Yeah, and some users prefer, we've keep up with all our users, and I inform them of driver changes and other stuff like that. But some people like Dave Pensato, he's always had the same pair since he started. He doesn't want to change. He doesn't want new ones. So, some people are just loyal and they like what they like and it's working for them, so they don't want to change it. And we understand that. We understand that.
We're engineers, so we understand each other.
Yeah, the amplifier thing. Also, we went with the traditional high wattage amplifiers because, again, as a studio technician, I saw the changeover in the control room when we went from passive speakers with internal crossovers, and then went to separate amplifiers to speakers that had their own amplification and crossovers on board. And I noticed the differences that happen. I noticed the breakdowns. I noticed all the different things that happen in the middle of there, and decision making as well as education for the user. And that's one of the things where I said, we're always going to have a need for the passive experience, because it's just the custom work that's involved in putting an amplifier inside of a speaker is a little too much to keep going on and on. It's the passive experience is how it started, and it's passive full range. So that's as simple as we can keep it. But as long as we can take the watts, that's why we went to using pro grade amplifiers and being able to match a passive set for a studio setting, because some people are working in a traditional studio and they'll have Brysons already, or they have something driving their low end and their lower reference monitors, and they'll want to use that. So we can work with all those pro amps. Anything with a good slew rate we can work with.
Right. Right. That's awesome. Well, I think the speakers are really, really exciting. I'm definitely going to get them set up here in my rig in my room and give them a good listen, because knowing both of your reputations, I'm sure they're going to be absolutely fantastic. And we're so excited to have you join us here at Sweetwater.
Yeah. We look forward to coming out there and visiting you guys for a little bit longer as soon as everything gets travel safe. Right.
We look forward to it too, and maybe we can do some more videos when you're out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That'd be great. Well, thanks so much for your time today. We appreciate you sitting down with us and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience with us. That's just such an important thing to pass along, and we're grateful that you did that for us today.
Thank you, Mitch.
All right, take it easy.
You guys take care. It's good to see you. And thank you for joining me today. We're welcoming Reftone on board here at Sweetwater, and I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.